Following the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, the world of JRPGs was undergoing a massive boom in popularity. This was spearheaded by the release of the PlayStation from Sony Interactive Entertainment, which not only brought 3D games to the market, but also acted as a CD-ROM based system. Developers around the world saw this as a huge step forward from traditional cartridges, which Nintendo opted to stick with on Nintendo 64. One such developer was Square, known for its larger-than-life titles like Chrono Trigger in the Final Fantasy series. Amidst the news that Nintendo would not transition to CD-ROM format, Square shifted to publish its latest and biggest ever games on PlayStation instead. This includes what is arguably the most influential game of all time, an RPG that shaped generations to come and sparked a race for visual fidelity, Final Fantasy VII. As impressive and genre-defying as Final Fantasy VII is, the story behind its development is almost even more mesmerizing. Following the release of Final Fantasy VI, Kaori Tanaka, known mostly by her pen name Soraya Saga, began to craft an idea for a story unlike anything the market had seen before. Working with Tetsuya Takahashi, the two completed an outline for a script of this story, which was presented as an idea for the next Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy VII. However, executives at Square believed it was too dark. Due to his work on Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger, the company allowed Takahashi to spin off the game into a separate project, Xenogears. Instead of focusing on fantastical kingdoms and mystical mother crystals, Xenogears explored religion, deep psychological theories, and dove deep into questions surrounding existence. Xenogears uses gameplay and narrative structure to explore Jungian and Gnostic themes, serving not just as a JRPG, but also a philosophical work of art, which paved the way for thematically ambitious games in the years to follow. One of the most important philosophical influences on Xenogears is Jungian Psychology, derived from Carl Jung. This school of thought focuses in on the human mind, examining not just the conscious mind, but the unconscious one to establish self-realization. There are many numerous aspects to Carl Jung's detailed thought process, but one Xenogears specifically honed in on was the concept of shadows. Jung believed that every individual possessed a shadow, a part of oneself that we deny and suppress, with the phenomenon eventually leading to psychological fragmentation. Xenogears' protagonist Fei Fong Wong exhibits this concept entirely throughout the game, as he is forced to fight against Id, a character that embodies Fei's suppressed memories of childhood. To become whole, Jung believed that one must overcome and integrate with the fractured self, in this case Id as the shadow. This immediately positioned Xenogears as a very unique concept at the time of release. Fei's entire progression throughout the game mirrors this, allowing players to take insight to his mind and journey of ascending to individuation. While we were off fighting alien parasites like Lavos and Chrono Trigger, Tetsuya Takahashi and his team put players up against themselves. Fei was forced to fight against his own psyche and come to terms with the true nature of Id. Of course, this isn't Fei's only personality in the game, and this all ties in with the Jungian psychology concept of quaternity. These are of course anima, shadow, persona, and ego. All four of these play a critical role in the story of Xenogears and how it is told, and nothing like this had ever been attempted before at the time. Alongside Jungian psychology, Xenogears also drew inspiration from Gnosticism. The concept of Gnosticism highly revolves around religion, with the thought that the material world we live in is not created by a god of goodwill, but a corrupted one known as the Demiurge, one who seeks to trap humanity together in false existence. This is directly seen with Deus, who is portrayed in the game as a flawed creator. Gnosticism exists through Deus due to the fact that this weapon became praised as God due to its ability to manipulate people. The inhabitants of Earth are unable to find salvation through worship but wish to gain knowledge, and reject those who oppose them. Aligning with the framework of Gnosticism, Xenogears uses elements like the Ethos Church or the lost technology found all throughout Earth as a way to vividly illustrate the world knowingly and blindly following this false deity. Even Solaris, which acts as the government, plays into this idea of being a purposefully deceptive entity in efforts to manipulate power. The game uses conversations between the party members to suggest that true salvation comes not from externally imposed knowledge, but from inner realization and understanding, aka Gnosis. While many games even today can acknowledge elements like this briefly and move on, Xenogears does quite the opposite. The game utilized lengthy cutscenes to incorporate these themes into each aspect. There are numerous conversations involving each of the main characters that dive deep into philosophical topics like the meaning of existence, finding one's true self, and even the concept of fate. These questions are not only posed to the characters in this narrative, but also to the player as the one experiencing it. However, Xenogears went beyond simply using commentary to tell its story. Whether purposeful or not, the gameplay design acts as a critical vessel to further demonstrate the core themes to players. Xenogears opens up as a massive world waiting to be explored. As an RPG on PlayStation 1, this game naturally came on multiple discs, 2 to be exact. Disc 1 offers a wide range of freedom, allowing players to explore different continents, complete side quests if they wish, and experience numerous open conversations with characters however one may please. However, Disc 2 could not be more different. Xenogears ran into critical funding and schedule issues in the back half of the game's release, and as a result, director Tetsuya Takahashi was faced with a choice: end the game after the first disc or find another way to finish the story. Takahashi proposed the solution of Disc 2 to Square, which allowed both the staff and schedule to stay intact. Thus, the almost visual novel nature of Xenogears Disc 2 was born. While this to this day is still a controversial approach, Takahashi spoke on it as recently as 2017, stating to outlet Kotaku, quote, "I do think my decision was the right one to make, because if we had just ended at Disc 1, it would have been bad. The nature of Disc 2 was not intentional by any means, but it plays so well into the core messaging of the game. Instead of freely exploring the world, players were now constricted and forced to sit through a story montage without much choice at all. It's unmistakably similar to the idea of Faye and the party unable to break away from the fate of facing Deus. Except now, the player is walking down an unchangeable path." Beyond the gameplay layout, the gameplay mechanics of both Disc 1 and 2 also play into various themes, as aforementioned. Duality is a concept that frequently appears throughout Xenogears, with a prime example in gameplay being the combat in giant mecha called Gears and as humans on foot. Both of these are used for different reasons. Human battles surround more personal and psychological concepts like the Jungian Psychology's fragmentation, while gear fights focus more on the external conflict strategy and the traditional JRPG battles many expect. Just as these psychological and philosophical ideas often divide the concepts of body and mind, we see a divide in gameplay between human and gear, human and machine. The The gameplay mechanics and gear battles also play into this, as these have resources like ammunition and fuel that are both limited. There is a sense of strategy involved, requiring the player to understand their freedom but use it carefully to ensure victory. As the game goes on and freedom slowly dwindles in gameplay with the transition between Disc 1 and 2, the characters also face continuous pressure in finite time in order to defeat the enemy, even though many players will not directly realize it. This gameplay structure embodies the concepts of fate and duality, and this ties everything together with the narrative in a way very few games can. The bold and unique narrative elements of Xenogears broke numerous conventions in the JRPG space at the time, in turn crafting a new path forward for ambitious creators who envision deep and psychologically complex stories. As aforementioned, Square was known for its fantasy-inspired worlds at the time. Beyond the obvious, this included games like Secret of Mana, which transported players to worlds filled with fantastical elements like fairies and forests. Xenogears, however, pushed the throttle to the world of science fiction, even going beyond that to incorporate religious and psychological elements. These elements led to the game almost not releasing in North America, with a Square representative citing issues concerning religious themes at Tokyo Game Show 1997. Xenogears likely looked to mecha anime at the time for visuals, especially with mecha design, marketing, and typography. However, the divergence from traditional Japanese RPG storytelling at the time was as original as can be, having paved the way for some of the most inspirational JRPGs of all time to release since 1998. This includes Yoko Taro's Nier Automata, a game that tells its story across 26 different endings in basically any piece of merchandise out there. There's also Vanillaware's 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, and of course, the spiritual successors to Xenogears, Xenosaga and Xenoblade. The latter especially has opted to incorporate numerous thematic elements of Xenogears into its titles, acting as a refreshed and recontextualized narrative with even more genre-defying elements. In regards to Jungian psychology in particular, we've seen it seep into various other games over the years. One of these is the Final Fantasy VII Remake project, ironically enough, which has recontextualized and retold the story of the 1997 RPG with new meta-commentary elements. Of these, Jungian psychology has been interwoven into the concept of worlds, which are believed to be spaces that are manifested by the dreams and desires of individuals, both living and dead. The livestream itself even plays into this, acting as a collective unconsciousness. Square Enix has also incorporated concepts from the Yogacara Buddhist philosophy of 8 senses, but this masterfully plays into the concepts derived from Carl Jung's research. Suffice to say, even almost 30 years later, Xenogears is still continuing to build its legacy as one of the most important JRPGs of all time. Today, Xenogears sits as somewhat of a miracle. It was almost Final Fantasy VII at one point. It almost did not receive the second half of its narrative, and it challenged the standards of what should and could be addressed in video games at the time. Utilizing both narrative and gameplay, Tetsuya Takahashi managed to direct a team that weaved together Jungian psychology, Gnosticism, and the concepts of duality and fate into every aspect of this video game. Xenogears managed to diverge and establish itself as the progenitor for deep and psychological narrative experimentation. Its legacy stands as a reminder that visionary creatives will continue to push the video game medium forward in ways not thought possible for years to come, by going beyond the norms and exploring what it means to exist.